Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Tuesday morning. I know it's not a great morning for any of us who call Greater Cincinnati home or Bengal Nation home. I'm Tom Brenneman. We welcome you to Dialed In, joined by Luke Brenneman before he runs off to class at Indiana University, and of course our producer and contributor to the program who has lots to say today is Casey McAllister. Our show is presented by UDF and Encore Technologies. We're coming your way twice a week now. Normally on Mondays, but we wanted to wait until Tuesday this week, post Monday Night Football. But Mondays at 9:15 a.m. on Chatterbox Sports, and then later that day we post on the Believe Network. And our new day is Thursday for a second show during the week. That'll be at high noon Eastern Time Thursdays. We'll do our picks and all that kind of thing. You can find us on YouTube, the Chatterbox Sports page. You can download us anywhere. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you'll be dialed in. Well, look, we'll keep this monologue short and sweet because I want to get to Luke and Casey. Like many of you, I'm at a loss for words. We were so excited about the start of this new Bengals season, getting everyone healthy, starting, of course, with Joe Burrow. A last-place schedule where we all can agree is beyond or was beyond gracious to the home team. I mean, of the first 5 on the schedule, the only winning team from a year ago was Kansas City. Less than a month later, here we are at 0-3. Less than a month later. The Carolina Panthers have won a game before the Cincinnati Bengals. And, of course, that's the team that's next up on the schedule, where they scored almost 40 points with the former Bengal Andy Dalton at quarterback on Sunday. Last night, defense went into the game beat up with injuries, and the Washington Commanders added insult to injury, scoring on each of its 7 possessions, 38-33 the final. Jayden Daniels, spectacular. His third NFL start, he only missed on 2 pass attempts all night long, and that college offense, remember that's what Cam Taylor-Britt called it during the week. Well, it may have been. Maybe a lot like Ohio State's offense or Texas offense. The Bengals, meanwhile, racked up plenty of offense, but again, leave points on the field. People get angry when you say it, but it's the truth. Another night in the red zone, 2 for 4. They missed a field goal. They kicked a field goal. That's leaving a lot of points on the field. You turn one of those into a touchdown despite terrible defense, and you win the game. The other big story, which we'll get to later in the program, which we haven't touched upon, it's days old now. David Bell is gone after 6 seasons managing the Reds. Where do they go from here? And what do you think they're looking for? What do they need? All right, Luke, let's get it to you first of all. Your thoughts on what happened here?
I thought it was really interesting. It's the case of one of those games where you had to watch the game to almost feel the domination of a 5-point loss. And yeah, it was one possession. The touchdown late was kind of saving it from looking a lot uglier than it already did, being 7.5-point favorites and losing outright. It's the same thing every year, but this is the worst it's ever been when it comes to starts. And this was the season people were saying we weren't going to start slow because we had to be ready for Kansas City in week 2. We were going to play our guys in the preseason, and I really don't know what's happening. You don't lose the penalty battle. Neither teams turn the ball over. The Bengals throw for more yards. They run for more yards. And Washington, it comes down to that stat. Jayden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, he had 2 incompletions all night. That is moving the ball with ease. I would love to see just how many times they were inside 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1 opportunities. They were moving the ball at will right down the field. For the sake of the Bengals, yeah, they looked smooth. I thought the smoothest drive of the season was the series in which Chase caught his 2nd touchdown on, which really felt like they were back in that football game before Terry McLaurin just tucked everybody in Cincinnati into bed last night. But nonetheless, you got to give the Commanders credit, and that's so hard to do. But I think a lot of Bengals fans like myself are really just enraged right now. You could say we've caught bad breaks. The Chiefs game, it was a penalty. Yeah, there was a couple bad calls last night if you look at that 2-point conversion in specific. But it doesn't matter at the 2-point conversion. If you can't stop anybody, you're never going to win. And last night was just true embarrassment on your home field from a defensive perspective. I thought the last thing to say, to sum it all up, they looked slow, they looked old, they looked tired, and they didn't look ready to play. They were outplayed last night, and that's the end of the story.
Longtime New York Giants, among others, greats, Chris Canty has already ignited a lot of the Bengals fan base this morning by simply pointing out that this team has spent its money. It's in the top five in offense. That's percentage of the payroll spent on each side of the ball. Top five. They're 22nd in defense. Now, look, we could sit here and play this game all day long about, well, they should have signed Jesse Bates. They should have signed DJ Reader. Look, we've been down this road. The Bates thing, you can debate that from now till the end of time. The Reader thing, the guy was coming off a very serious injury, and you have to certainly put some thought into that before you're signing a guy to a long-term deal. But even after the Reader decision had been made and they go get Rankins, this team had to know. Luke, this team had to know that outside of Trey Hendrickson, they were hoping that there would be such a thing as a pass rush besides Trey Hendrickson. Well, Myles Murphy, of course, is AWOL. He's out hurt. Never getting on a guy about being hurt. You're hurt, you can't play, But this has been a total neglect of the franchise on a part of Lou Anarumo's defense. All people are all over Anarumo today, and that's fine. You're allowed to be. But this defensive line is just brutal. We all thought that the Commanders would come in here and try to run the ball all over. They threw the ball all over.
Yeah, with a rookie quarterback too, whose main thing isn't necessarily his Heisman trait as his arm. He was just so confident to the point where I looked at it as an embarrassment to the Bengals defense. He's looking over on 4th and 6, 4th and 5. Give me the play, because he knows he's got these guys. He had them on the ropes all night. The entire defensive line, they could throw 5 at them. They could throw 6 at them. It was going to get picked up perfectly, and there was no penetration. Back to your Myles Murphy point. Let's sit down here for a second, Bengals fans, and realize that we're scraping and clawing and bringing up a second-round draft pick in a later pick than, you say, a top 20 edge rusher in the draft in Myles Murphy, and we're like, oh, we don't have him, so there's no pass rush. We have no pass rush at all. It doesn't exist. And that's something that's pretty straightforward in the NFL. There's guys like Yoshivas at the wide receiver position that you're going to draft, and they can turn into a stud and catch a touchdown here or there. When it comes to pass rushers, you either got them or you don't. There's about 10 elite guys in the league, and then maybe 15 behind that really consistently get to the pass rusher. And yes, you have Trey Hendrickson, but the rest of this line is so bad that if teams just focus on him, let him have his one sack the way the Bengals are going, and you're going to be just fine elsewhere, because it's not like the secondary did them any favors either. I thought they played so much just press, relaxed cushion coverage. And it's like 3rd and 5, and Daniels is just dinking one over the middle of the tight end, just sitting in the middle of the field, wide open. How many times did we see that last night? I mean, heck, I could have gone out there and completed at 98%. It was pathetic.
Well, that does bring into question some of the strategy which was utilized, or more accurately, not utilized last night. If you're a believer in really, I mean, it's just a very sensical, common, without a lot of depth thought, that if you're going to play a rookie quarterback, you would think you would show him lots of looks and blitz him a lot. Okay, now Daniels is a mobile guy. He can get around, man. I mean, this guy's going to be a really good player. He might end up being a great player. He looked great last night. Last week, they didn't punt, but they kicked 7 field goals against the Giants. But, man, when you're undermanned on that defensive front, I just find it hard to believe that you only call for 11 blitzes during the entire game.
Well, I mean, that's what they've done a lot. And I always look back at the Chiefs game because it's such a masterclass of an idea of a defense when Lou does that to perfection, when they start rushing 3 against Mahomes and he has 15 seconds to throw and there's nowhere to go. But I think that the strategy with a guy like Daniels is so different in the sense of he had confidence last night. It didn't look like something new to him. And if you're not going to get to the passer, your coverage has to be good. And I feel like you still have to have at least one turnover. Most coaches use the turnover battle as a way to win or lose the game. If you want to play the turnover battle game, yeah, there was no turnovers. Evan McPherson did miss a pretty straightforward field goal that could be considered
Yeah.
the only fake, whatever turnover of the game. And that ended up to prove a big role in this game. But you can go back to the 2-point conversion in that. There's your 5 points that you're missing out on. But it really is the defense. And I don't think I can bring up one part of this defense that excelled, let alone did their job last night. You pretty much got 40 spotted by a rookie quarterback. They scored on every single drive.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing that did go well, but of course you could say, well, who cares? They didn't need to run the ball the way they were throwing the ball is when Washington did try to run the ball, the run defense actually wasn't too bad last night. But that's neither here nor there. Look, people get so wrapped up in stats, okay? And I have said this once, I've said it 10,000 times. I think Joe Burrow is a great player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. There is no question about that. I'll take him right now all day, every day on every team that I could have if I were starting a franchise. He's the second best quarterback in the league, period, to Mahomes, period. But people think you're like giving a personal attack when you simply say this offense, and he is just a part of it. There are other factors involved. I think the play calling when they get in the red zone is awful. How are they running on second down and goal from the 14 last night? It took a miracle to barely break the plane on fourth down on the touchdown throw to Yoshabas. He didn't even run a route that got him in the end zone. They are leaving points. Sometimes you have to win a boat race. Sometimes you just have to win a shootout. That's just the deal. You don't want to play in those all the time. But they are leaving so many points on the field in the red zone by attempting field goals, more times than not making field goals, a rare miss, first in 29 straight that McPherson has missed. He's due to miss. He's human. But, man, they get down in the red zone, and I don't know. Obviously, you shorten the field, and there are only so many plays you can run. But I just look at this offense, and the offensive line was great last night. Didn't hear a lot from T. Higgins. Chase was phenomenal. The All kid is going to be a great player. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And Yoshi just finds a way. What's he have? 22 career catches, and he has 7 touchdowns. The guy just finds a way to make a play. But, Luke, it's too many trips in the red zone, and they never score.
Yeah, I mean, this really dates back to last week because now that you start 0-3, you almost take out the division. I know the division struggled outside of the Steelers, who were arguably picked last in a lot of smart people's rankings and whatnot. But when it comes to this team in the red zone, all you have to do is stack it up on a matchup perspective. They're converting in the red zone when it doesn't necessarily matter. It was the definition of too little, too late last night. Yeah, they come out. They showed life in the second half. Back-to-back touchdown scoring drives. Washington started this game with 4 straight touchdown drives. The Bengals started this game with the most perfect drive of the season. At the first touchdown of the game, you go up 7-0. You say, here we go. Prime time, home field, we're back. And you stop that by settling for a field goal that was missed, then settling for another field goal that you're making. And next thing you know, you're down 2 scores. And it's a second half. The clock is running against a team who wants to run the ball. It's all about time and place. And that's why stats, like you mentioned, can be almost neglected in a way because the Bengals and Joe Burrow look like they played this flawless game offensively, and they pretty much did on paper. 7.2 yards per play. They dominated Washington, who dominated them. So it's a funny thing to look at, but overall, you have to move on. And I think that the one saving grace right now, at least for myself, as we sit 0-3, is in back-to-back weeks, the offense has shown up. The defense looked good in Kansas City, but this is a consistent theme with the Cincinnati Bengals where one side of the ball shows up. Are we calling to fire Zach Taylor or are we calling to fire Lou Anarumo? That's what I just saw in the chat, and that's kind of what it is because one of the sides looks so just the polar opposite of elite. And then there's the bottom of the barrel in the NFL, and that's exactly where the Bengals defense sits right now. Something needs to change. And I'll ask you, Dad, do you think it's a personnel thing? Do you think it's something with this defense where they're just not constructed to play winning football?
Well, of course it's a personnel. I mean, of course it is. You knew, as we've talked about already, we knew going into the season that from a straight personnel standpoint, the only guy who has proven, now I'm not saying you can't have a breakout year for guys. I'm not saying that at all. But the only guy that has proven he can get to the quarterback is Hendrickson. You knew that going in. You knew that teams ran down your throat last year. You were humiliated inside your own division by teams that all of us look at as simply being tougher physical teams than the Bengals through the years. Now, I'm not saying they're better teams. They're not. But the Steelers and the Ravens and the Browns all have one thing in common compared to the Bengals. They will punch you in the mouth. They'll line up and punch you in the mouth. Now, the Browns are terrible, okay? But they're still going to come in here and try and run the ball. I don't think the Ravens are all that good, but they're going to come in here and run the ball. And say what you will about the Steelers, and everybody's, including here in the chat, people saying, I mean, the Steelers are 3-0 with their backup quarterback. They're 3-0 with a backup quarterback. I think their defense has given up fewer than 30 points in 3 games. So it's a personnel question. There's no doubt in my mind. And, everybody, again, is taking this here in the chat like I'm sitting here saying anything bad about the offense. I'm just saying the only point I'm making, again, to repeat, don't take it personally. Yes, they scored 33, but last night was a game because of their defense. They needed them to score 40, and they left 2 chances out on the field to do that last night. So do you expect them to be perfect? Nobody's perfect. Okay, we know that. Lord knows that. But there are some times, Luke, you've got to win a shootout game. And last night was one of those games, and you didn't have to watch the game very long from the very get-go to realize it was going to potentially be and turn out to be that kind of a game.
Yeah, I think what surprised the Bengals was the thing that surprised all of us, and that's Jayden Daniels' ability. I mean, that throw to Terry McLaurin, that was a game-winning play. So I want to continue to reiterate that the Cincinnati Bengals got beat by the Washington Commanders.
Yes,
the Cincinnati Bengals lost to the New England Patriots. They beat themselves in that Pats game. The defense kept them in it. Our billion-dollar offense, soon to be if we ever pay Jamar Chase, was at fault in week 1. And then week 2, it was a toss-up. That's the best team in the NFL, and you hung in there. You got an unfortunate call at the end, so take out week 2. But if you look at the 2 bad losses where we're north of a touchdown favorite, we lost one game and we were beaten the other game. And I think the best thing to note is that the Bengals offense was beat by the Commanders offense. So that's your point about sometimes you have to win a shootout. Jayden Daniels delivered more often, more steady, and more consistently throughout that entire game until that McLaurin deep ball that just sent everybody home than Joe Burrow. And I know he threw for 300 and 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. That's a great game. You lost. And then the defense obviously lost to the Commanders' defense. Commanders' defense was awful. They gave up over 7 yards of play, but they got stops in the red area. They got lucky on a missed field goal, and that's sometimes how you go into someone else's home turf on Monday Night Football and beat a really good football team. I don't know if I can even call the Bengals a really good, certainly not an elite football team right now, but you have to start at square one. There's no better place to start than playing the worst team in the NFL next week. And I mean, that's it for me. I'll let you guys take the rest of the show away, but I'll leave it at that. You have the Panthers. You got to get back to 1-3. And I said this at the start of the show. Take out the division. Take out the AFC like it's been. We are trying to grit and claw back to 500, and then let's go play football and try and make the playoffs from there. So that's what I'll leave it with.
All right, Luke, you have a good rest of your day, my man. Good luck in class today. All right, so great to have Luke. Listen. Billy Bob loves Charlene. I never said that Lou Anarumo has to go. I think Lou Anarumo is an outstanding defensive coordinator, and I think he has proven that when he has been given the talent on defense as they had in both of their trips to the AFC Championship game. I think when he's given talent, I think this guy is one of the top 5 defensive coordinators in the league. But if you don't have players, it's the same in every sport. If you don't have players and a couple of the key guys, no Rankins, no BJ Hill last night. You just signed Lawrence Guy off the street. I mean, think about that for a minute, okay? This cat's been no different than you and me for the last however many months. Training camp starting in July, going through August, the preseason, first 2 weeks of the regular season. This guy has been at home, no doubt preparing himself physically for a 15th year in the NFL. Okay, so this isn't on him. But you're running him out there literally days after you sign him because you have nothing else. You have nothing else. But I still think Anarumo is an excellent defensive coordinator. Casey, I know you are very, very upset. And I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are really upset. I mean, let's be honest about it, right? With everything going on in the world today, here we are in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's healthy. We're expecting this to be a really exciting, fun journey. And it's a journey. It's not like baseball every day, but it's a journey. You talk about it all week. You get excited for the opponent. When you get home games, you're selling out. And here you are now 3 games into the season. Believe me, when I go out of town and I'm sitting and having a beer somewhere, having dinner with guys I work with on the CW, and we're talking about the NFL, I stick my chest out and try to brag about the Bengals. Try to brag about them. I mean, I'm bummed just like many of you are that this is where they are after 3 weeks of the season, Casey, without a single win.
Yeah, it's not good, Tom. It's not a great place to be at as a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I think the most frustrating part about this whole thing is the lack of awareness of your weaknesses and strengths throughout the years, right? You finally get a great offensive line. They're able to protect Burrow. The offense is clicking. And this defense that you've relied on for years now is just completely different. It's completely changed. It's one of the worst defenses in the league now.
Yep.
That's what it is right now. It's just one of the worst defenses in the league. And I understand the concerns about, the injuries, that maybe if we had BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins in there, that it would change anything. Tom, I don't think it changes much, to be honest with you. Last night, I thought it was a reflection of how bad Sam Hubbard played, and he's one of our starting edge rushers. He had a league worst. I've got this pulled up here. He was 6.22 yards on average away from the quarterback. That ranks 127 out of 128 out of the entire league on the defensive line in week 3. Jayden Daniels had 3.13 yards or 3.31 seconds per pass.
Yeah.
I mean, he had all day to throw. And to me, it feels like they just completely neglected the pass rusher the issues that we've had. They didn't go out and get a guy that was able to really affect the pass rush. Like Osai, I'm done with Osai. The experiment with Osai didn't work out. Myles Murphy can't stay healthy. There's just a lot wrong. There's just a lot wrong with this defense right now, Tom. And even going into the secondary, there's communications issues still going on in the secondary. Von Bell, where was he? On 3rd and 16. He's 10 yards back, and Zach Ertz is wide open on what should be a bracketing double team on Zach Ertz. Where is he on the touchdown to the offensive tackle, which happened now twice in a row on this defense? When's the last time a team has given up a touchdown to the offensive tackle on a pass? And when's the last time?
I would say that's probably never. I'd like to know the answer. Yeah. I would say that's probably never.
Yeah. And on top of that, Tom, like they did what they had to stop them from running the ball. They committed to stopping the run. You had to play perfect in the secondary. And what does Cam Taylor-Britt do? What does Dax Hill do? They get burnt over the top for touchdowns. It's unacceptable. Like that, you just can't. You can't do it. You just can't make mistakes when you're selling out to stop something, right? And that's what happened. And you give up 38 points. And I'm not with you necessarily on the offense needing to be able to be perfect, but it felt
I didn't say, Casey, I didn't say perfect. I said all along, you can be imperfect. I said that. I don't expect anybody as a human being or collectively as a team to be perfect. I'm just saying this is 2 weeks in a row now where the numbers don't lie. If you're going to use numbers to support how great something is, and we all know this about stats, that they can fit any narrative that you would like to create. And the stats, if you just look at the stats, yes, you'd say the Bengals offense against Kansas City was really good. And last night, the Bengals offense was really good. They scored 33 points. But there are also stats that tell you, okay, the offense gave away a fumble return for a touchdown last week. Okay, difference in the game, right? There are other things that mattered in the outcome of that game, but that is a play that made a difference in the game. There were multiple times in the red zone where they did not score touchdowns against Kansas City. And there were 2 more last night where they get in the red zone. And I blame it all on the personnel here. I think play calling has a lot to do with it down there. But I'm just saying, Casey, if you're going to say statistically the offense was great, and I never said they should be perfect. Never said that. Never will. About anybody or anything. But why not 3 out of 4 in the red zone instead of 2 out of 4? Is that asking too much?
Well, that's what I'm kind of alluding to. Like everyone on offense, like if you're going to ask for 3 out of 4 in the red zone, like Joe Burrow overthrowing Zach Moss on that easy first down. Yeah, I can point at that. I can point to the low throw on Jamar Chase. Maybe he got both hands on it. Maybe he could try to pull that in better. Yeah, maybe Mike Gesicki should have pulled in that 3rd and 11 throw on the first drive of the game. Like there's moments on the offense, yes, that you can point to. But in terms of what they did, I cannot in good conscience blame anyone on offense for what happened last night.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Cannot do it. It has to be a self-reflection of this defense and what it has become. They made the decision to let Bates walk, and they said, we're going to replace him with 2 sub-tier players at the safety position. We're gonna let Bell walk as well. And we saw that experiment went well. You bring in Bell back, and you realize that maybe the secondary was ran by Bates this whole time because Bond Bell, like right now, looked lost out there. 3rd and 16 gave up a huge play on that touchdown to the offensive tackle. Yeah. The secondary just looks lost out there. They look lost. And it's also the defense had no help either because we blitzed 11 times. You were allowing Jayden Daniels to just pick us apart. You gave no help to the secondary. And it's like you try to blitz him, and Jayden Daniels makes a perfect throw to Terry McLaurin in the back of the end zone for the game winner. Like part of me is so frustrated with the defense that it's you got to also recognize one thing before we get out of here or before we move on to a different topic, Tom. I think Jayden Daniels is a legit quarterback. That last play solidified it for me. 10 guys on the field, Tom. 10 guys. They're scrambling to get a play in. Jayden Daniels sits in the pocket, gets pressure in his face, hit as he throws, a perfect ball in the back of the end zone to Terry McLaurin for a touchdown. It was just a buzzsaw waiting to happen for the Bengals last night. It just a culmination of what's happened to this defense over the last couple of years, the coming out party for Jayden Daniels, the offense just not being perfect. right? I would call it perfect. Like they had to be perfect to be able to compete with them, to be able to win that ball game. And it's a shame because, even if they didn't convert on some of those opportunities in the red zone, if McPherson makes the kick, if they call a PI for T. Higgins in the back of the end zone, maybe they get that 2-point conversion and they have a tied ball game. It's just things like that where they're right there. They on offense, I think they're all the way back, Tom. When they're healthy, this offensive line looks great. Jamar and T, they look fantastic. But they're going to waste this opportunity this year because their defense just sucks. It just sucks right now.
Yep. There, you are spot on, which leads me now into, and let me say, and I think I've said it already, but just to make sure everybody understands, okay? I don't think this season is over. I really don't. Because of one of the things you just said. This offense does look like it is going to be sensational moving forward. We'll see Higgins more involved. Last night, his first game of the season. Jamar looked great. Okay. The tight end spot is so good and only getting better. Mention the alt kid. He is just going to be such a good player. Man, oh man, is he is a good player. He's a good blocker. He's the best pass catcher. Gesicki, say whatever you want. He has been an outstanding addition to this team. They look like last night they have a chance to be able to run the ball a little bit more. I still don't get the whole thing with Dan Pincher telling us that, it's just the way the game plays out now for 3 weeks in a row, that Zach Moss is getting 74%, if I'm not mistaken, of the snaps on offense last night. And that means that Chase Brown's in the 20s, because every time Brown touches a ball, it looks like he's gonna break one. But Moss had a good game last night. Moss had a really good game last night. Ran the ball well, caught the ball well, blocks and pass protection. Burrow wasn't getting beat up last night, and a lot of that had to do with Moss being back there to help out the block. So I think moving forward, the offense has a chance to really do a lot of very, very special things this season. And the offensive line looked good last night. You're right, Casey. So there is unbelievable optimism from that standpoint, okay? But, what we've seen so far and what we know about where they are from an injury standpoint, just the injuries, okay? Is Hill back next week? I don't know. Rankin's back? I don't know. Murphy ever going to play? I don't know. Jenkins, he's all clubbed up last night, non-factor. Pass rush outside of Hendrickson, not there. Are they, we continue in Cincinnati, and how we do this, I don't know. I don't know how you do this at all in life when you look down on other people. And in this case, looking down on other teams. I just don't get it. But how in the world can anybody in their right mind, based off what we've seen over the last 48 hours, where Andy Dalton scores 38 points for the Carolina Panthers against the Raiders, and the Raiders stink, but how in their right mind does anybody believe that this is a slam dunk win for the Bengals in Carolina next week? And that's just a microcosm of moving forward. Who are they going to beat, Casey, with that defense? And what are you going to do to try and fix a defense? I don't think Anarumo's going to bust his ass to try and figure that out. No one, I guarantee you, he's been in there all night long looking at the film room. I can promise you that.
Oh, yeah.
But what's he going to do?
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Tom, but last week with Andy Dalton, that quarterback, with him having better pocket awareness and that offensive line, it was one of the best offensive lines in football last week. And let me tell you, the Raiders have Crosby, they have Christian Wilkins. They don't got no slouches there in Las Vegas. They don't got no slouches there. So it wasn't like they just beat up on a practice squad defensive line like we do. I hate to break it, but I think we're in for a rude awakening when we go to Carolina. It is not going to look pretty. That being said, Tom, The only way we're going to be able to win games is if the offense is perfect. They
That's right.
have to pick up the slack. And I don't know if they're capable of doing it. I really don't. Because all along we've had these issues with we pointed out the issues the last 3 years about pass rush. Well, what was the other concern that we've had all basically tenure of Zach Taylor? And that's play calling. That's just, being a hyper potent offense. They have all the talent in the world. I'm not blaming any of the players. But when it comes to play calling, I don't trust Zach Taylor to call a perfect game ever. And that's what it boils down to, is how we feel so hopeless now at this point. Is there's no hope, there's no light at the end of this tunnel. And we talk about roster construction. Who are you banking on to come in and save this defense? It certainly isn't the guy that you benched at corner in the cornerback battle against Dax Hill. It's not DJ Turner. It's not going to be a guy that you've had benched for communication issues. I'm assuming communication issues, because I don't know why else you wouldn't play him, Jordan Battle. And it certainly isn't going to be Myles Murphy. That's not going to be enough juice to get this pass rush going. Like, I don't know what.
We'll see. We'll see on Murphy. We'll see on Murphy. Okay. I mean, look, he was a number 1 draft pick. Whether you agree it's a good pick or a bad pick, we can't honestly say one way or the other, because he barely played at all last season until the end of the year, and he hadn't played at all this year. So, I mean, the jury's out on that guy. I'm not going to beat down some 24-year-old, 23-year-old who hadn't had a chance to play in the league yet and say he's not going to be able to do it, because I don't know. You're not going to be able to, people are yelling and screaming about make a trade. Well, it'd be great to make a trade, but you're going to have a hard time finding. Trades in football are very difficult to start with. Secondly, the Bengals rarely ever make trades, and they're not alone. Third, we're 3 weeks into a season, and a lot of people are not going to start just peeling off players 3 weeks into a year. Now, the Patriots were the exception on that right before the start of the year. Judon, they sent him off. So, I guess anything in the grand scheme of things is possible as far as that goes. But we all agree it's unlikely. It's just unlikely they're going to make a trade. I think, Casey, I sit there and I say to myself, and I ask the question, and I'm not saying one way or the other here, so please understand it before I ask the question. I am not taking a side on this. But if the Bengals, the way they're constructed today, if the Bengals rank in the top 5 as far as the percentage of their payroll that is spent on the offense, and they're 22nd in terms of spending percentage-wise on the defense, and you've watched what you've watched so far this year, you got the Chase thing, you got the Higgins thing. What are you going to do?
I don't know, Tom. And I think that's.
You think it's a fair question?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. They had to be perfect or near perfect when it comes to drafting the last few seasons on defense. I've got a list of guys here from 2020. From 2020 to this season. A list of guys that were drafted on defense. In the first round, we have Dax Hill, Myles Murphy. We'll see about Myles Murphy. Dax Hill right now.
Well, let's see on Hill. Hang on, Casey. Again, let's see on Hill.
Let me finish this list.
All right. Okay.
Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner. He's currently our 3rd string corner. Chris Jenkins. We'll see about him with the club. We have Logan Wilson, Joseph Osai. I would say that's a bust. Zach Carter, probably shouldn't be on an NFL defense. Jordan Battle, he's buried in the depth chart. McKinley Jackson, we'll see on him. Injured reserve at the current moment, or PUP list or something like that. I can't quite remember. Akeem Davis-Gaither, he's been a solid backup linebacker. Tyler Shelvin, I don't even think he's in the league anymore. Cam Sample, out for the year. Khaled Kareem, not on the team anymore. Tyson Anderson, special teams depth. Josh Newton looked pretty good in the preseason. We'll see if he helps us out later on in the future. Cedric Johnson, I don't even know where that guy is. I know he's edge rusher, but he's probably buried in the depth chart too. Marcus Bailey, Wyatt Hubert, Jeff Gunter, DJ Ivey, and Dijon Anthony. None of those guys ended up being stars, at least not yet. We'll see about Miles Murphy. I have hope. Cam Taylor-Britt, you got to stop making those big mistakes before I can start really calling you a star in this league. Logan Wilson, you can debate whether or not he's a star defensive player, but there's not enough. Like, they have not done enough in terms of bringing in new rookies on cheap contracts to keep the defense going, keep it churning. And that's basically what I wanted to point out is they were going in this direction of, all right, we're shifting our focus and our salary budget to the offense now. And it's worked out so far. If you just looked how they played last night, I would say that is a high-powered offense. That's exactly what you wanted. But they gave up too much on defense. And that's where I go back to that conversation, and people think it's old and tired, but look where we're at now. You lose DJ Reader, you lose you lose Jesse Bates, you lose the corner, I can't remember his name. Awuzie. Like, you lose some of these pieces, Ogunjobi. Like, you lose some of these pieces, what made your defense so good in the past, and it's just slowly deteriorated this defense to what it is now. They swung and missed on what they tried to do to replace these guys. And maybe when they get healthy in the interior of the defensive line, we see a little more juice. But from what we saw weeks 1 and 2, I didn't have hope in that being an answer. Like, it didn't help me believe in this pass rush any more than what I do right now. So that's where the fans are right now, as just a lot of dread on this team right now, because it doesn't feel like there's any answers.
Okay, but let me ask you this, Casey, and I asked it at the start of this, and thank you for sharing all those names, because I think it's great insight, and I think the same thing could be said in terms of their drafts on the offensive line. I mean, let's be honest about it here. Volson's the only homegrown guy on the entire offensive line. The only one. And you got him in the late rounds. You weren't expecting that guy when you took him to be a starting player for multiple years on your offensive line in front of Joe Burrow. You got Brown, Kara, Kappas, all free agent players. Trent Brown, free agent player, and sadly he's hurt. And you hope and pray that guy's able to come back. Mims is a drafted player, but you know, obviously he's been hurt. But again, Casey, I get back to the question, and I want to hear from the guys in the chat. I mean, we're getting some great stuff here today from Ron and Natron and Colton and Fred and Mousecop and Joshua Morgan and everybody, Sir Boy Wonder, Ryan, everybody in the chat today about their thoughts. But here's the question: where are you gonna give Chase, or any wide receiver? Are you gonna give them a $40 million a year contract? And know before you do it, and again, please understand, I am not endorsing one or the other, okay? I'm not. I'm just asking the question for you, Casey, and for all of you out there. If you spend $35 or $40 million against the cap per season, 25, 30 million, whatever number you want to pick, okay? And you can maneuver it around with guaranteed money and so forth. We know that. You're going to take a hit somewhere else, right? You know that if you pay Peter, right, you got to rob Paul, right? Because something is going to be missing on your roster that you probably need if you go do that with any player. Hendrickson is a free agent at the end of this season. Can you imagine what this team would look like on defense, as bad as they've been, if they did not have Trey Hendrickson? So again, the question, Casey, are you going to give a skill position player, take the name out, knowing what you know about this team right now, are you going to take 35 or 40 million a year and pay that to an offensive player? Another offensive player?
I mean, it would certainly be tough. To be clear, Hendrickson, it's not this upcoming season. It's
Yeah, it's next year.
2026.
I beg your pardon. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's
That's
20.
right. He was wanting another contract. You're right.
Yeah. So the guys that are up, T. Higgins, B.J. Hill, Mike Hilton, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Mike Gesicki, Mike Hilton, Trent Brown, some of those guys are up this upcoming season. They have $60 million next year if we're looking ahead into the future. Like I get what you're saying, like paying Jamar Chase $40 million, so majority of what you have left to spend on the cap doesn't leave much room to bring in more talent, especially if you're losing BJ Hill, if you're expecting him to be a vital piece of this defensive line moving forward. That's really tough to do, especially with Mike Hilton leaving too. I think that's also another vital piece that would be leaving. Slot corner can't be understated. So I'm with you on the idea that I'm tired of where the team is at defensively because they've swung and missed in terms of the draft on a lot of guys. Now, we only need one star, right? We only need one guy that's a top-tier pass rusher, I think, to really just elevate this team. Like if Miles Murphy ends up panning out, I think a lot can be hidden, right? A lot can be disguised. But what made this team so good for years, and I think you and I share the same belief, has been how good this defense has been on third down and Lou Anarumo's defense in the second half over the last 3 or 4 seasons. And it's completely changed now. And you go look at what got you there in the first place. It was spending $100 million on defense. I don't know if you remember that first season with Zach Taylor.
I do.
We bring in Hendrickson. You bring in DJ Reader.
Von
Bell. Like, I don't know, Tom. Like, I don't know what the direction the Bengals should go in the future, but certainly would have to maybe make you hesitate before signing the dotted line with Jamar Chase because clearly the defense is struggling right now. It's going to be a bottom-tier defense. And unless some of those guys end up panning out, you're really taking a gamble. And I don't know I'm not going to sit here and claim like I know what the right decision is. Maybe it is signing Jamar Chase and they just hit on a guy in the draft this year or something. Or maybe they hit on Miles Murphy. But as of right now, from what we saw from a depth perspective, from a roster construction perspective, they have failed to continue to make this defense a top-tier defense. And that's hurt them in the long run.
Right. Kev X in the chat brings up a great point, says if you draft competently, and I think that's what we're all saying here, if you draft competently, says Kev X, you can afford Burrow and Chase and still field a good defense. They haven't done that. And here we are. Where was the other one I did like? The point was made here by Ron Esterman. Every team in the league has to manage a salary cap. It requires teams to be good in the middle and towards the end of the drafts over the years, especially if you're a team that's making the playoffs every single year. And they made it, I shouldn't say every single year. That's completely wrong. They made it 2 years in a row. They didn't make it the year before, and they didn't make it last year with Burrow hurt. So they made the playoffs twice. They drafted, middle back ever since that draft with Burrow and Chase and that group. And they haven't hit it. You just gave some of the names. Yoshivas is going to turn out to be a nice pick. We'll wait and see about Burton. But again, these are guys on offense and not on the offensive line. They've had to spend a ton of money on the offensive line to be able to protect Joe Burrow. All right, look, I don't know what else to say. I'm just really, and it's not, again, I repeat, it's not over. I'm just so disappointed the way this whole thing has just started. And I'll be honest with you, a little bit sad. I mean, look, I have no ties to the Bengals. I have no money in the franchise. I'm not a season ticket holder, but I'm a Cincinnatian. This is my home. I mean, I chose after I moved away for 25 years to move back here because I love it here. I wanted my kids to grow up here. I wanted to live here. I like the people here. I love the. I was just in Dallas over the weekend. Man, there's not enough money in the world to get me to live in a place like that compared to here. So, you know, and 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 I get a lot more emotional about the football team for some reason than I do the baseball team. Even though, again, I have no ties to them. They owe me nothing. I owe them nothing. End of story. But this is our hometown team, and this is really so disappointing. It's savable. There are 14 games left. It's savable, I think. But I think 14 games is a lot of games.
Yeah,
All
you're
right.
right.
It's
Statistically,
a lot of games, Casey. It's a lot of
the,
games. And I know you got to play
uh,
Baltimore twice. You got to play Pittsburgh twice.
what
I get all that.
what do they need to do? What do they need to do the
I don't know
next?
what you do, Casey. I don't know. See, that's the thing. I mean, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I'm not giving anything here. I just don't think that based on the past with teams all over the NFL, Bengals included, I just don't see how they can go at this point in time and make a trade to help the defensive line. They've got to hope that the guys that they have there, like you just said, Hill and Rankins, Murphy, Jenkins, they've got to hope those guys can get healthy, get on the field, and produce. That end of story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and one of the things too, I see a lot of people saying trade for someone, trade for someone. Um, we are sharing an 0-3 record with only two or three other teams, I believe, the Jags and the Titans. Like there's some teams out there that have not given up yet. Like you're not going to find a team willing to trade at this point. Maybe when it comes down to week 8, when the Bengals might be looking at 2-6, you know what I mean? Like it might be too late by then to go get
Yeah.
a guy. And I would argue if they're anywhere close to a 500 record, that I would give up my first round pick for a guy. But I'm with you, Tom. There's not really an answer. I would say that there's a conversation to be had about what the record needs to be in order for this season to continue going in the direction that we want it to go. Obviously, they need to win this game coming up. They probably need to win against Baltimore. You probably need to go basically 4 wins in a row to feel good. Honestly, you just need to win out. You just need to just keep winning games. You need to get a win. You need to start stacking wins somewhere. And it's just going to be a tough battle to do that in Carolina.
And another thing, Casey, which we haven't even touched on, and we'll do it again on Thursday, is everybody talks about this whole Chase contract and the whole thing now. We know that Higgins is on a franchise tag. Theoretically, could be again next year, but Chase was non-existent the first 2 weeks without Higgins on the field. Higgins shows up last night. Now, while he didn't do a ton, they didn't throw it to him much. Chase has a bust-out game. What if you played 17 weeks with no Higgins and only Chase? What would that look like? Okay. Last thing I want to get to before we get out of here today. I've not been on since the announcement was made. Totally shifting gears here. And I really don't know how many people in the town, to be honest with you, care. I get surprised sometimes, both ways, how much people care and then really how little people care. And that is about the whole Reds thing going on. David Bell, 6 years. Everybody acts like he wasn't given talent here. That is complete nonsense. He was about half the time given talent. Let's remember now, in the COVID season, he had a Cy Young Award winner, the only one in the history of the franchise. They spent a lot of money, and they didn't score a single run in losing 2 straight games to the Braves in the postseason. And it was a 500 team. I just made the comment a second ago, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Do I think all of the Reds issues this year are David Bell's fault? No. A year ago at this time, think about this for a second. And I know you guys have talked about it on Off the Bench. A year ago, the Reds thought enough of David Bell to give him a 3-year contract extension. They go into this year, and Nick Kroll, he faced the music yesterday and answered the questions. What has changed? Some of the young players have not progressed like we thought. Well, how many of them can you really evaluate? I'm not saying he's wrong on that. Marte gets suspended. He's come back, been awful. Encarnacion Strand played 29 games. He was awful. But was he hurt already? I think it was proven he was hurt. He already had a broken bone in that hand. The pitchers have made progress. But again, there's an issue here with health. And I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face. They're going to face the same thing next year that they're facing this year. They don't have a single pitcher that pitched an entire season again. And they're all under 25 years old. What are you looking for now? Whoa, my dog is even chiming in. My main man, Oliver. The mailman must be here. But anyway, so, I'm just wondering, what do you want now as a Reds fan? Do you want a Lou Piniella-like guy who comes in here? Because the one thing you can say for sure about Bell, if you believe he should have been fired, there is one thing that the manager is responsible for and his staff is responsible for, and that is executing the fundamentals of the game. It is a reckless team that hasn't learned a single thing on the base pass. I'm all for aggressiveness, but they've not learned a single thing on the base pass. They have been an awful base running team. You can say, well, they're stolen base percentage and they lead the league in stolen base. That's all fine. But how many huge outs have they committed this year at third, at second, at the plate, from running recklessly on the base pass? And their defense, come on. I think they made the right move. I never cheer for another person losing their job because I know what it feels like to lose a job. Many of you out there know what it feels like to lose a job. So I never sit around and endorse guys to get fired. You can pick apart the job somebody's doing from time to time, but I always feel for somebody who does lose their job. But I know you guys have talked about it, Casey, on Off the Bench. You're not surprised, are you? Or maybe you are.
No, I'm not surprised, Tom. Not one bit. It's just I think the timing of it was a little weird. I guess they want to get ahead of schedule and just try to clean house and get that process started a little ahead of time, ahead of all the other teams. But all the things that he has done for this team, he gave them 3 winning seasons when they've only had 6 winning seasons in that ballpark. In all honesty, I kind of agree with the idea that he got them as far as he was ever going to be able to get them, and that's probably a wild card team. I think you need a little more. You need something more to get this team over the hump. Personally, me, I want a guy that's a little more going to get in your face, someone that's going to fire you up a little bit more. Now, we don't know what he was doing inside the locker room with the guys. He's kind of held back that. At least most of the fans, I think, would agree that we have not really truly seen what it's like inside that locker room, inside that clubhouse. But when you see him on his press conferences and it's just monotone and it's just no energy, low energy, and it's always, we got to do better, we're going to do better. Yeah. It's just, it gets a little tired. I need a guy with a little more fire. Need a guy that's going to be willing to fire them up a little bit, get it in their face a little bit, tell them to step it up. We, on this channel, on Chatterbox, I've heard a lot of names thrown around. Francona is a guy, Barry Larkin. There's lots of options.
That ain't happening. Larkin's not happening. That's just not going to happen.
But whoever it is, I need someone that's going to really hold them accountable and maybe hold them accountable in front of the press, in front of the fans as well.
Fair enough. By the way, I saw the Real Spirit Cat mentioned, and man, he's a good man. Real Spirit Cat, I'm sorry to hear that you had lost your job. You and I have walked around a lot of golf courses together, watching our kids play together. And I guess you just added now that you have found employment since. A little less money, but zero stress. Good for you. Okay. So I hope you're doing all right. Hey, listen, for an impromptu sort of show today, great stuff in the chat. Thank so many of you for joining us. I'm really surprised by the number of people we had here today, again, where we normally don't do this. So our next show will be on Thursday. Luke and Casey and I will be here on Thursday at high noon to look ahead to the weekend. We got into zero college football today, and there's a lot going on in college football. Boy, it's fun to watch. But I will see all of you guys on Thursday, 12:05. Casey, thank you, my friend. Great being with you, buddy. Great stuff.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, man. All right, here we go. Off the bench, United Dairy Farmers. Here we go.